Running a restaurant is not an easy task. Regardless, Apollo was always pleased with his Kilimanjaro restaurant in Middlesbrough. This was a company entrepreneur who treated his workers and customers with dignity. 3 out-of-towners came in for some chicken and departed without paying. Their acts angered Apollo, and then he received a letter. Kilimanjaro was a popular location for soccer fans to dine after seeing Middlesbrough FC play over the weekend. One of the restaurant's trademark dishes was Waka Waka chicken. Despite the busy weekends, Apollo and his crew were taken aback when 3 out-of-towners arrived and then left without paying. For the first several hours of that hectic weekend shift, everything looked typical for Apollo and his Kilimanjaro crew. Customers were pouring in by the thousands, and business was booming. To be honest, Apollo wasn't even present. He was enjoying himself with his family, totally unaware of what was going on in his restaurant. He had no clue that something unexpected was going to occur, or that he would get an uncomfortable phone call from the manager. Midway during that busy Saturday shift, 3 men came through the restaurant's doors, obviously looking for a seat and some food. There's a high possibility they arrived from out of town and supported the other club. The employees could tell there was a difference in their accents at the very least. It didn't take long for them to be attended to by a waiter, who took their orders. After then, everything seemed to be going according to plan. Walking into a restaurant you've never been to before and placing an order is always a risk. The 3 buddies, on the other hand, were overjoyed that they had selected Kilimanjaro. 2 of the pals ate Waka Waka chicken with cheese, while the third ate Waka Waka chicken without the cheese. Based on their lack of dialogue, the crew could tell these 3 men were savoring every meal. The 3 pals were ready to collect the check after a half-hour wait. One of the things the buddies couldn't get past was the sauce on the table where they were dining. They noted at first sight that the bottle's design and colors were identical to those of another well-known chicken restaurant, Nando's. However, after they tried it, they discovered it had a unique flavor and proceeded to enjoy their delicious dinner. It was finally time to pay. The 3 friends were willing to pay for their dinners. The entire cost of the meal was £35, about $43 in today's money. As the server approached their table, Tom, Alex, and Harry grabbed their credit cards and gave them over. They were taken aback, however, when the server told them that they could only pay in cash. After that, the server walked to another table to collect orders. The 3 buddies, on the other hand, had a different plan. They were startled to discover their table vacant when the waiter came to collect their cash payment. Tom, Alex, and Harry had just stood up and walked out of the restaurant. They hadn't paid for their meal and had gone without a trace. As a result, the waiter had no option except to call Apollo, who was not happy. When the waiter described what had occurred, Apollo was totally puzzled. He couldn't comprehend how a bunch of friends could go into a restaurant, place their orders, eat their meals, and then leave without paying in today's society. The fact is that Apollo has been on a lengthy trip with numerous ups and downs during his existence. But this was the most insane of them all. In an interview with Gazette Live, Apollo stated that his home nation, Burkina Faso, literally translates to the land of honest people. Apollo has always prized honesty, having spent his formative years in the West African nation, and he took that attitude with him when he came to the United Kingdom many years ago. In Apollo's situation, he had no option but to take extreme measures. Because of his image as a trustworthy person, Apollo had strong emotions about what had occurred in his restaurant. Indeed, he acknowledged that the event had caused him to lose confidence in mankind. As a consequence, he instructed his staff that if anything similar occurred again, they should ensure that the clients remained until they paid. Despite his disappointment, Apollo clung to the notion that the clients would return. There was still no indication of the 3 guys returning to pay for their lunch after a few days. Apollo made it a point to be in the restaurant at all times in case Tom, Alex, or Harry arrived. The owner's chances of seeing them again decreased with each passing day. While doing work in his office, Apollo was startled to see one of his staff rush in and present him with something. When the waiter walked in, he told Apollo that he had a message for him that he wanted to read right immediately. The staff member was obviously acquainted with the letter's contents and was anxious for Apollo to discover what was inside. The owner grabbed the envelope from his waiter's grasp, curious as to what it could hold. The contents of the letter, however, as soon as he opened it, astonished him. As he opened the package, Apollo was startled to see 40 pounds, roughly $50, in notes tumble out onto his desk. "We opened the envelope, there's some money," the owner told Gazette Live. It didn't take long for it to be discovered that the money had been given by Tom, Alex, and Harry, the three guys who had left the restaurant only days earlier. Apollo was taken aback by what he had received, but he was in for another surprise when he opened the package to find a note inside. When Apollo began reading the letter, he could see that all three of the companions were extremely remorseful for leaving the restaurant without paying for their meals. "It is my buddies and my deepest apologies. We forgot to pay our bill," one of them wrote. "It was uncharacteristic of us, which is why we are so sorry." Regardless, Apollo remained dubious of their genuineness. Then they went on to explain what had happened that day. Despite the fact that they had not indicated that they planned to pay for their lunch that day, the three buddies convinced Apollo that they did so honestly. They just didn't have any cash on them. They stated that they intended to pay by credit card but were informed that the eatery only takes cash. This explains why they didn't say anything as they left the restaurant. They needed money and were searching for a method to acquire it. However, things did not go as planned. The three friends decided to hurry out and locate the closest ATM machine after learning from the waiter that the restaurant does not take credit cards. They even claimed to have struck a deal with a staff member to go out and collect money from a machine and return it as quickly as possible. "We then left Kilimanjaro to start on a hunt," they stated. Despite their best efforts, they were compelled to shift their focus. Despite spending the next half hour searching for an ATM, the three companions realized the final train back home was about to leave. This distracted our focus away from locating an ATM machine and resulted in us sprinting down to the railway station and almost missing our train, they wrote. At that moment, the party realized they had neglected to pay the check. They were miles away from Middlesbrough at the time, and it was too late. They were sending a letter to Apollo rather than returning to the restaurant to pay him in person since they lived in a different portion of the state. Because they weren't from Middlesbrough, they wouldn't be able to return to the restaurant and apologize as they had planned. They weren't sure when they'd be back in Kilimanjaro, so they wanted to pay them as soon as possible. While reading the group's explanation humbled Apollo, it wasn't the only thing they shared with him. Tom, Alex, and Harry also informed him that they had so much fun at Kilimanjaro that they wanted to rate it 5 stars. They said that they will write a positive comment on TripAdvisor as soon as possible. When he finished reading the letter and put it on his desk, he was at a loss for words. According to Apollo, he was completely gobsmacked after receiving the message. "When we initially got the letter, it was very, truly unexpected and shocking," he added. As for the owner, he couldn't believe individuals could still do such things. "I thought such sorts of individuals vanished from the world," he added. And, despite being from the land of honest individuals, Apollo has grown to think that honest people may be found everywhere. Although the letter restored Apollo's trust in mankind, there is no indication that he ever met the three friends in person on Kilimanjaro. However, they seem to have kept their promise and posted a 5-star rating on TripAdvisor. "I would strongly suggest to anybody in the region and would certainly return if I find myself in Middlesbrough again," they said. Returning for Waka Waka Chicken, on the other hand, would have been a waste of time. The long trip back to Middlesbrough by Tom, Alex, and Harry seems to have been in vain. This is because Apollo's restaurant has been closed since the event. The cause for the restaurant's shutdown is unclear, although other locations seem to be functioning regularly throughout the nation. In any event, Apollo seems to have found a lot of inspiration in that heartfelt letter, and his life has only been better since then. There's no doubting Apollo had to be upset when he was forced to shut his eatery. However, it doesn't seem that the businessman wasted any time in getting back out there. Just days after getting the terrible news, Apollo was busy sharing pictures of himself and his family online. In one of the pictures, he could be seen driving his vehicle, and he wrote it with two simple words, "Feeling fortunate." Despite the fact that Tom, Alex, and Harry will be unable to return to Apollo's restaurant to show their thanks in person, they will be pleased to hear that he is happy and thriving. The billionaire not only makes his own sauce, but he is also the chairman of Thornaby FC, a soccer club. As a consequence of his recent commercial endeavors, Apollo has established touch with well-known soccer stars. One thing is certain, the future of this ambitious guy seems to be bright. At the end of the day, Apollo's primary motive for becoming such a great businessman is to provide for his family. He also wants to make his spouse and children happy, as well as to encourage his children to be as ambitious as he is. We have no doubt that after hearing tales like this one, they will grow up to follow in their father's footsteps.